Hello everyone, it's Lisa and this is Web Design Online, and I'm here to present to you some course materials and activities for week 7. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in to the coursework and the assignments and lectures, and scroll down here to week 7. Okay, so this week we're going to talk about wireframes, and you will be finishing your very final technology lesson for the semester. The rest of the semester you'll be working on the project, so there will not be any more technology lessons. So the last lesson this week is covering CSS and how to work with cascading style sheets inside of your HTML document. Okay, so that's basically what we'll be covering today. I'm going to make 2 videos for this because I want to keep these videos as short as possible. It just takes so long for me to process them. So I'm going to try and make 2 short videos to cover this week's activities. This will be the first video, part 1. Okay, so let's jump in here. And what I have here for you in week 7 is at the top some resource materials, and most of these materials here are related to CSS, cascading style sheets, documentation. I've got some links in here for you to click on for examples. I've got the links to the W3 schools, which you have studied in the past for your HTML training. You also have the link here for the CSS tutorials. Some other areas of the W3 schools that are really worth taking a look at are the box model, which is pretty important, and I've also given you another link to another website that is really informative in talking about the box model. And if you're curious what the box model is, I just brought it up here. It's basically talking about the properties of how CSS affects your content on an HTML page. Okay, so you can read through all this information. I can't possibly cover all this. My lectures would be too lengthy, so you'll have to read through this. If you have any questions, you can post those in the problems and solutions. Okay, so we'll click back here and get back into the course. Back to resources here in week 7, and there's some other links here, so I highly recommend you take a look at these resources for studying and for examples. The next portion of what's in here in terms of activities this week is the week 7 progress report. So this week your progress report will include your wireframes, and you will be creating those wireframes in Photoshop. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I did my wireframes and give you some points of reference to kind of work from. But for the most part, I've detailed all the instructions about how to get started with thinking about wireframes right here in this progress report. So basically you're going to start with planning sketches, which I have. I'm going to bump back here to Photoshop and show you what I have here. I have my my work sketches, which are these 2 examples right here. Okay, you can kind of see I did these sketches. I have a little application or app on my iPad called Adobe Ideas, and it's basically a little sketch program. I think it was like $9. And I'm able to create sketches on my iPad, and then I could upload those sketches straight to my Adobe Creative Cloud, and then I was able to download them here onto my computer in my office. So it was a real easy way to do some sketch work. So you can see here that I have this sketch and I have this sketch. I have one for my home page and I have one for my inside pages. Okay. Now, my site isn't exactly the site you're working on. I'm working on my own personal site here, but it still applies. You should still sit down and you should still produce a series of sketches so that you can put these sketches in front of your client and ask them if if they feel you're going in the right direction with the organization and the look and feel, more or less, of the website. I mean, it doesn't show you everything, but it gives your client an idea of your thought process at this point. The web development process is so lengthy and drawn out that it's important that you get buy-in from your client all the way through the process, starting with your sketch work, so that you don't produce something that, say, isn't approved or is not to their liking, and then you have to rework it, and it ends up costing you money and time in the long run. So it's really best for you to show your client sketches first, get buy-in on kind of like a simple layout, and then move forward with producing wireframes, knowing certainly that your client had approved those sketches prior. Okay, so it's just a good habit to get into before you actually sit down and generate hourly work for your client. Okay, so here are my sketches. And then, as you can kind of see here in Photoshop, I have 4 windows open. I also have produced the wireframes that go along with these sketches. So basically, if I jump back here to eCampus, this is what you're required to do this week. You need to produce a series of sketches. If you don't have an iPad or Adobe Ideas to create sketches digitally on your tablet, you can easily just draw them out on a piece of paper and scan them in. But you will be required to turn those sketches into me, so it's important that you go ahead and make those sketches. So you'll make 2 sketches. You can always make more sketches if you're brainstorming some possibilities in terms of layout. I only require you to give me 2. Okay? And then from those sketches, you'll create your wireframes in Photoshop. And I've given you some criteria here under the wireframe section about how you should begin your Photoshop document and get started on creating those wireframes. So I say here that to start your Photoshop document, you want to start a new page or a new document in Photoshop and make that document 1024 by 768. So if we bump back here to Photoshop, and we'll just take this example here, which is my home page design here, and if I go into image size, I indeed have set up my document to 1024 by 768, and that is this page here. Okay. In addition, once you do that, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this out of this mode that I have it in arranged here. This is more or less, I just want to see the one, let's see, let's take it out. We want to float all windows here. Okay, so I want to talk about this particular file specifically. So I just wanted to open it up so that we can talk about it and enlarge it just slightly here. Oops. Okay, so maybe we can enlarge it. There we go. That's better. Okay. So as I said, I set up my document to 1024 by 768. That is what I recommend you start with in terms of size for your web pages. Okay. Now if I go ahead and Command colon here, turn on my guides, you'll see that I have gone ahead and ruled up a layout here based on guides. So what I have done here is I've given myself a set of margins around this white page. Okay, so think of the white page as your browser window, and then think of your content here, this box and this text, as your web page. Okay, so I've gone ahead and made some guidelines for myself to work with. And let's go ahead and turn on the, let me turn off some of this stuff so that we can talk about the guidelines that we're talking about here. Okay, so basically I have set up a margin here, and I mentioned that margin in your criteria for getting ready for creating wireframes in eCampus here. I've said this is easily done. by creating a page, which we've done, 1024 by 768. And once you create that page, you want to set up a design space. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about here, a design space of 960 by 690. So if we go back here to Photoshop, I have pulled in, according to these instructions, 32 pixels on the left and right and 39 pixels on the top and bottom. And you can kind of see here that I have that margin going on. So that's where that comes from. Okay, so then within that area is where I'm going to design my web page. Okay, and in order for you to properly measure out guides and stuff, the window you should have open that will be the most helpful is your info palette, and that's located under Window, Info. Okay, and when I drag a guide out from the ruler here, notice that it gives me a dimension that of where I am on my layout, and I can let go and that will put a guide in that particular area, and that's located right over here. Okay, it's hard for me to point because you can't see my finger, but and I can't point up here if I'm holding a guide. So basically you should be watching in this region of the info palette, and it'll tell you where your guide is sitting on your layout here. So I went ahead and I pulled in my 32 pixels on both the left and right and my 39 pixels on my top and bottom, and within that space is my design space. Okay, just so you understand how that works. I also have a lynda.com tutorial section here listed for you to look at if you're confused on how to get started with those wireframes. I'm giving you really a real fast-paced overview of how it should be done. I cannot sit in detail and do this in these videos. They're just too lengthy to make. So I have to go quick, and I have to kind of, you know, review it swiftly. I can't go over every individual detail. You can find that information in the Photoshop for Web Design section 5, creating wireframes. Okay, they talk about indeed what I'm talking about here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on my layers here, and we'll take a look at what I have here. All right, now I've gone ahead and I've done some additional stuff, but we're just going to look right now at the wireframes. So based on that sketch back here, this is my sketch. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put that down there. So here's my sketch here. I was able to produce this homepage design here. So across the top of my homepage, I plan to have a header photo. I don't know yet if it's going to animate where it changes, you know, every few seconds. I probably would just have a static image there. And then I'll have the title, which is me, Lisa Gabrielle, Design Educator is my title, and then my navigation will appear here in the lower left-hand corner, my Vita, portfolio, and contact. And then I plan to have a footer with my copyright information. Now I'm laying this out exactly how I plan to see it once it loads into the browser window. I also plan to give it a margin and have all of my design sort of shift inward a certain amount of pixels. It looks like about 150 or so. Let me pull this. Let's bring up that info box again. Here, I'm going to watch in this area, and I'm just going to kind of pull this away. So it looks like I'm going to indent my design about 160 pixels inward, and then that's where this design will start. Okay, so that is my wireframe for the home page, and at this point that's all you're required to do. What I would recommend you do on your wireframes is determine the typeface you're going to use for your web design and kind of box out these regions, okay, of where content will go. Okay, all right, so that's that one. And then this one here is, I'm going to go ahead and break these, float all windows. So we'll float all these so that we can sort of look. Okay, let me open this up and Make that slightly bigger. Okay, so now looking at this wireframe and this sketch back here. So this was my sketch. Open that up, make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so I did the sketch here, and I plan to have my title and my name are going to shift up to the top on my interior pages, and my navigation is going to move over to here for all of my interior pages. Okay, and then I plan to have these boxes to indicate sections of my gallery or my portfolio, because I have 4 sections of my portfolio. I haven't really brainstormed what those are yet, so I just put gallery over here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But I do have a button here called portfolio, as well as I have an indication of what that inside page will look like by putting these boxes. Okay, my my footer information is going to remain the same. So if we look at these 2 pages next to each other, let's go ahead and arrange these in a 4-up scenario here again. Okay, let me go ahead and size these down so that we can talk about this and turn off those guides. Okay, and move this out of the way. So basically what we're looking at here is the home page and the inside wireframe. And if you notice here, you could see that I haven't really shifted the footer information. It's going to remain basically down near the bottom. It had to move down slightly because these wireframe boxes are taking up some more space up here, more space than this header did. But the content is going to remain the same. So I plan to have this information down here in my footer. Okay? So if you look over here, let me put the guides back on, you'll see that within that design space, my web page is going to start to come alive. And over here, if I turn this on, my guides, notice that I'm also going to have that shift over 160 pixels as well. And I am changing up my navigation and my header information. So based on what we're looking at here, it coincides with the comment that I made that the home page should look different than the interior pages. So you can kind of see how I've changed that up. Now, it doesn't have to look like a completely different site, but what it should do is have some continuity. So you can kind of see I use the same typeface here for my name and my title. I just moved it up here, same typeface. Okay, notice that the navigation appeared here on the home page, and once I moved in to the interior pages, the navigation will now appear up at the top, and most of the activity will happen in this region here, whether it be a full-sized image or a gallery of sorts, which is basically what this is showing. Okay, I slightly moved down my footer information to the bottom of the page on my interior, where on the home page it sits up closer to the header up at top. Okay, so this is basically what I'm expecting from you this week in terms of wireframes. All right, the other thing I wanted to talk about here is organization of your layers. So clicked over here on this file for my home page. Notice that I have myself organized over here based on groupings. So I have a grouping for my header, I have a grouping for my banner, one for my navigation, and one for my footer. So if I wanted to turn those off as a whole, as a global, turn all these eyeballs off globally, I can just click the eyeball and it would turn off everything that is in that header. Right now it's just one thing. My banner is going to be my contact or my name and my title. The navigation all turns off all at once. What I'm doing is I'm looking down here, and if I turn that back on, you'll see it. And then over here under the footer, you can kind of see I can turn that off globally. So in essence, this one here, I've actually moved one step further than a wireframe, and I started building out the design, which is what you'll be expected to do next week. And I'll just quickly show you what it's going to look like. So if I turn down, twirl down the arrow here for my header, and turn off my wireframe and turn on, I've started building out some content here, which is eventually going to become my header. So I have this, oops, this is actually not going to show up there, oops, not that, but this one, that layer, there you go. So you can kind of see here that I am starting to build the design, bringing content in, adding more decorative typography. I've got my logo coming in. So I'm starting to work on bringing in the graphics. And this is going to be what you're going to be doing next week based on your wireframes that you build this week. Okay, I haven't done that over here, but I'll probably build this one out for next week for the example. So you can kind of see where you're going with this after the wireframe phase. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. If you also click over here, you'll see that this page, it involves a folder for, that would be this one right here. Let me go ahead and make this a bit smaller so you can sort of see it. So I've got a content area. I've got a navigation area, and I have a footer area. Now, if I wanted to, I can even break this down, maybe make one more folder here and put this in it and call it name and title, or, you know, if it's okay the way it is, I think I might leave it this way, but if I find that it's something that I want to add more graphics to, I may end up categorizing it into a folder of its own so that I can keep all the graphics for this one particular region together. So I'm starting to get organized in building my wireframes right off the bat. So I'll be ready to slice this up into individual images when I'm in week, I think that will be week 9 that you end up doing that. Okay? All right, so hopefully that makes sense. And again, back to the assignment here, that's worth 50 points for this week. And if none of that made any sense, you can certainly follow up with looking at the Photoshop for Web Design Section 5, creating wireframes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make another video covering the CSS technical tutorial you'll be working on. So talk to you later.